Welcome back to the Making the Madness team preview series. Today we're going to be discussing the Seton Hall Pirates, who are coming off an incredible season where they won the Big East. We'll be looking at their season this coming season.
The starters for the Pirates this season will look like Bryce Aiken, the transfer from Harvard, to Cal Molson, the transfer from Canisius. Then Jared Roden will play the wing. He will also play some of the four in certain lineups. Then you have Sandro Mamukelashvili, this returning star to this team, and Ike Obiagu.
Yeah, looking at this roster, I think that the backcourt's really where things, were working so perfectly. Last season, Quincy McKnight was an elite defender, good glue guy, great passer, and then Miles Powell, who's just a dead-eye scorer. Replacing those two will be very difficult. But Bryce Aiken, we've seen it in the past at Harvard. He's an outstanding player. He's going to come in and take over the point guard role, and then Call Mason as well. That's a good backcourt, and it'll be a backcourt that I think we'll be looking a little bit more for some help because Miles Powell's not going to be able to put up 25 points a game, but it's going to be a good backcourt. I think that you can probably expect about 25 points per game from Aiken and then Molson, and then the front court's where it's at because they got Mamukelashvili back, they've got Jared Roden, they've got some versatility as well in this lineup. So I really like the Pirates coming into this season.
Yeah, definitely. You spoke about Bryce Aiken. Miles Powell's an irreplaceable player, but if you want to find a carbon copy of Miles Powell, you're looking at him in Bryce Aiken, just a dead-eye scorer. He's not going to be much of a, pass the ball around kind of guy. He's going to try to find his shots, and he will do that as long as he can stay healthy. His entire career has been plagued by injuries, but you saw last season when healthy, one of the few games he played last season at the Orlando Invitational against Maryland, he dropped 30. He's just that kind of talent to where he can drop 30 on any given night. And then, obviously, speaking about Mamukelashvili, what's not to love about a 6'11 guy who can just knock down threes at a high clip? That's what he does. He's a pretty solid defender. Not an elite defender, but he gets the job done. But his offense is what you want him for. He broke some bone, I think, his wrist last year. So that sidelined him for quite a bit. And then Ike Obiagu is a guy who will step into the role that Romaro Gill left. I think they're the same height. Gill was like 26 years old, like very old for a college basketball player. But Obiagu transferred from Florida State, played there a few years ago, had a decent season for the Pirates last season, but now will be expected to pick up more of a role. But nobody adjusts their lineups more than Kevin Willard.
Yeah, definitely. And Obiagu going to be important, being at that shot blocking presence when, they go big and play Mamukelashvili at the 4. Obiagu is going to be asked to play a big role. And then obviously, I really like Jared Roden. I think he's a player. While we talk about Mamukelashvili, while we talk about Bryce Aiken, if Roden can become, I think he can become maybe the first or second option on this team offensively. He was just kind of playing a perfect small ball role a season ago when Mamukelashvili went out, where he was essentially playing for the 4. He was playing a bit undersized, but he was in a perfect role. And if they decide let's go offense only, I think he's going to be able to step in at the 4 and fill out the lineup and make this team offensively really efficient.
I definitely agree there with Roden. He's a versatile guy. He's listed as a guard. He can really play the 2, the 3, and he played a lot of the 4 last season with Mamukelashvili hurt. I'd assume he start the wing this season. We'll see how Willard adjusts his lineup. There's going to be 20 different starting lineups by the end of the season. But he'll play some of the 2, the 3, and the 4 throughout the season. And, I mean, even in the right situation, he could probably even play a really small ball 5. He's a fantastic rebounder. He's a solid scorer and shot 33% from deep last season, which was way up from 24 the previous season. If he can continue that upward trajectory, you're looking at a future really good player.
Now looking at the bench for Seton Hall, some familiar names, some unfamiliar names, obviously. Miles Kale, comes to mind. He's been at Seton Hall for what feels like 15 years. He was, the second Miles when there was Miles Powell. He's, going to be an important piece. Tyrese Samuel, kind of a bulky, you know, undersized forward, along with Shavar Reynolds, I think the key players. And then Dominguez Stevens, Jahari Long, and Jeff Nugandu. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, maybe?
That sounds right. Yeah, that sounds right.
That's the full bench. I think the key player, at least I'm looking at, is Shavar Reynolds. Uh, we'll see what Bryce Aiken does, but if Bryce Aiken gets hurt or something like that, Shavar Reynolds is kind of an experienced player. He can play the point potentially if needed. He could even move Bryce Aiken off the ball at times. He's someone, former walk on, has earned his scholarship, has earned his way onto the court. He's just a really good, sound player and a clutch player because he hit that three to beat St. John's a few years ago. He's going to be really good for this upcoming season.
You just stole literally everything. I was just thinking in my mind, I'm like, what am I going to say about Shavar Reynolds? I'm like, the St. John's game winner, and he was a walk-on. So now that those have been covered, let's talk about Miles Kale. Miles Kale, if you read the site, makingthemadness.com, if you don't, I highly recommend you should do so. I did a piece maybe this week. These days are kind of just jumbling together at this point. But I did a piece on 5 bounce-back candidates, and he was one of them. He had 10 points per game 2 seasons ago while shooting 37% from deep. This season, he had 6 points a game while shooting 28% from deep. You've got to assume there's going to be some regression to the mean in there, maybe to 34, 35% from deep. He really fell out of favor with Kevin Willard. At points, I believe there was a game or two where he played like 5 minutes. Like he was getting benched, and then he started getting more minutes late in the season. But he just really needs to be consistent. He's a good player, I think. He just really needs to be consistent. Tyrese Samuel, he's a guy I think could have a breakout season. He's a 6'10", really skinny 220 forward. I guess we'll see what we're going to get out of him. Only 11 minutes a game last season. I don't know. Maybe he plays a role, maybe he doesn't.
Yeah, I think with Samuel, he could be part of that, super small ball death lineup where they maybe throw Tyrese Samuel at the 5, and then have like Jared Roden at the point, and then Miles Kale or Jared Roden at the 4, Miles Kale at the 3 with Molson and Aiken or something like that. You could see, potentially super small lineup, which would be certainly interesting. I think Samuel's the guy they would do that with.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously the 3 freshmen, Dominguez Stevens, Jahari Long, and Jeff Nagandu. None are top recruits. I believe Long is the highest ranked. I think he's borderline top 100. None are going to play super huge roles. Nagandu's a big man. I could see him playing a role at some point. Maybe Long plays some minutes off the bench, but I don't see these guys playing a huge role. Stevens is a 6'5" shooting guard, so maybe he gets some run at some point. But overall, I don't see the freshman doing too much on this team. But again, with Kevin Willard, he likes to adjust his lineups a ridiculous amount.
Yeah, and they'll get minutes. They'll definitely play this season. I just don't see any of them having a huge role.
The big departures for Kevin Willard's squad is obviously all-time Seton Hall great Miles Powell. He is moving on to the NBA after a great career as a Pirate. Romaro Gill, who was 25 years old for most of last season, he was nearly 30 years old playing college basketball. That is fantastic. And then last but not least, glue guy Quincy McKnight have all moved on.
Yeah, I think the key, obviously Miles Powell is the superstar player, but Miles Powell, Romar Gill was just the perfect 5-man. He just was able to block shots at will. Really came on early in the season and just got better and better as the season went along. He's going to be missed. We know about Miles Powell.
You just said it. Miles Powell and Miles Gill combined. That's fantastic.
Quincy McKnight, obviously you mentioned it, glue guy. He was a good passer. great, on-ball defender, was one of the better on-ball defenders. McKnight and Gill, really ignited that defense, made it, a really, solid defense. And those two being gone will be impactful. And then Miles Powell from Trenton.
There you go.
You just can't understate how important he was to the Seton Hall program. He's going to have his jersey retired in the rafters. He's going to be on the Mount Rushmore of Seton Hall players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you didn't watch the Miles Powell Senior Day against Marquette, the before game ceremony with him crying, if that didn't touch you in your feelings, I don't know what to say.
Definitely. It was even worse that they ended up losing to Villanova on senior night. Would have been fun to watch them close out the Big East, but they still, led by Miles Powell, win the Big East title, a share of it. Okay, going into the season, there'll be some expectations for the Pirates. The first one, can they continue their NCAA tournament streak? They've made the NCAA tournament every year since 2016. Would have made it last year, probably as a 2 or 3 seed. Obviously, unfortunately, we don't get that NCAA tournament, but we're counting it anyway. They've made every NCAA tournament since 2016. We're extending their streak for this year. But can they continue their streak?
I think absolutely. I think that they will be more of a bubble team, more so to what you saw a few years ago where they got in as a 10 seed and lost to Fletcher McGee and Wofford. I think that they'll be on the bubble more of a 9, 10, 11 seed than firmly in and a national championship contender. But I think certainly they will return to the big games.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of see this being a similar team to the 2017 team. This 2017 Pirates kind of, you know, they had some young players coming in, but kind of a group of experienced players that were on
Kadeem Carrington.
Yeah, Kadeem Carrington,
Angel
Delgado, Desi Rodriguez, freshman year Miles Powell. Uh, that was a solid team, but obviously they got much better the next season. Uh, I think that's kind of what I would expect. I think they'll make the tournament. They'll struggle. They'll lose a few games, but at the end of the day, Kevin Willard's a very very solid basketball coach. This is a good roster. They're gonna make the NCAA tournament.
Absolutely.
And the next question is: are they a top 25 team? Maybe. I could see them cracking the top 25 at some point this season. I don't know if they're like an indefinite top 25 team throughout the season. I don't, you know, I think they're probably fourth in the Big East standings going into the season, but they definitely have some good pieces, and we'll see. Maybe Roden or Sandro take a bigger step forward than what we're expecting, and this Seton Hall team ends up being, Miles Powell, reincarnated top 10 team for the upcoming season.
Yeah, I definitely don't have them top 25 preseason. I believe I had them in the 40s in my top 100 list on makingthemadness.com. Of course, check it out if you haven't. Gotta plug it, of course. But I do think at some point in the season, if things go right, they could sneak into the top 25. But I don't think they will be a consistent member of the list.
Yeah, that's kind of what I would say. But you never know.